Welcome to the deep dive. Ready to dive into a question that's probably, crossed all our minds at some point.
Oh, absolutely. The age-old head-scratcher.
Yeah.
If God's truly all-powerful, all good, why is there so much suffering in the world?
Right. It's like that dissonance. It's kind of what we're tackling today, diving deep into divine providence, that whole can of worms, with a little help from Gideon Lazar's paper.
God works all things for good, right?
Exactly. He really goes there. Doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. I mean, we're talking Dionysius, the Areopagite, Book of Job,
Yeah.
heavy hitters.
And Lazar's take, it's not just about God's goodness. It's about how God might actually use evil, even the devil's actions, for a greater good.
That's what threw me for a loop, I gotta admit. First time I read that, I was like, hold on, back up a minute. How's that even track?
Right. Bold move. And that's where someone like Dionysius comes in. Centuries ago, he was wrestling with this, and his angle is fascinating.
Lay it on us.
So instead of good and evil, like two equal forces duking it out forever, Dionysius, he calls evil a privation.
Privation, okay. Gonna say, not exactly a word I throw around every day. What's that in plain English?
Imagine a light bulb. Light, that's goodness, right? Evil isn't like anti-light, its own thing. It's the lack of light. The darkness where the light isn't.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So it's not this big, bad enemy force.
Exactly. It's bound to the good, defined by what God already made. Dionysius said everything God makes inherently good. Evil is just a corruption, a distortion of that.
So like you build a car, it's great, then rust sets in. That original design, it's still there, just messed with.
Perfect analogy. And that's huge EE, because evil's not on equal footing anymore. It's limited.
Okay, so if it all comes from God, all good to begin with. What about us? Humans. We can be pretty awful. Free will. How does that fit into this whole shebang?
And that's where it gets really interesting. Free will, for Dionysius, that itself was good. Part of the design. It's how we can love, choose the good stuff,
But also choose wrong. Like you were saying, rust on that car could go either way.
Exactly. Potential for both. And get this, he said it applies to angels too, not just as humans.
Whoa, wait. Angels have free will. Never thought about it like that.
Right. And see, Satan, the whole fallen angel thing, that was Dionysius's big example of free will gone wrong. The ultimate oops.
Okay, but even if I buy all that, if God's got the whole picture, past, present, future, why is he letting it play out like this? Angelic oopses included. You'd think he'd, course correct before things get too bad.
$1 million question right there. And this is where Lazar's like, let's bring in Job.
Mm-hmm.
That whole story, it's practically a case study.
Oh, I see where you're going. Job, good guy, loses everything. Family, health, the works. And for what? A bet between God and Satan. Brutal is an understatement.
No kidding. But it grapples with this head on, which is what makes it so potent. You've got Job totally justified in questioning, like, what gives? And God's answer. It's not some neat list of reasons.
It's more like, yo, Job, I made the universe. You're seeing a fraction of the action here.
Exactly. Were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth?
Yeah.
It's humbling, almost. Like, our human brains, we're not equipped to grasp the full scope of what God's working with.
It's like scope locked on our own little timeline,
Uh-huh.
But even with that, the end of Job, those creatures, Behemoth, Leviathan, intense stuff. God's showing Job these almost monstrous things. It feels like a power move or something. What did Lazar make of that?
Oh, yeah. Some of the wildest imagery in the Bible, right? And tons of debate about it. Are they real, symbolic? What? Lazar's take is they point back to Satan.
Hold up. Satan is these creatures. How's that work?
Well, think about it. Behemoth, Leviathan, these huge, unstoppable forces, right?
Yeah.
Chaos, destruction. Sounds a lot like Satan's whole deal, doesn't it?
Okay, yeah, I see it. But God's still in charge even of that.
Exactly. Like a leash on a wild animal. Powerful, but restrained. Ties back to privation. Even Satan's bound by God's power, ultimately.
So big picture time. If God's using all this, even the bad, for good, what is the good? Lazar actually give us an answer.
He does, and it's a doozy. Remember how Job, even when he's hurting, he's like, I know I'll see God. That whole, from my flesh I shall see God.
Yeah.
Lazar connects that to Jesus.
Wait, Job predicted Jesus? Now that's a twist.
Right. It's all connected. That statement, Lazar argues, is like foreshadowing Christ's incarnation. The ultimate good that outweighs all the bad.
So the suffering, the pain, it's not just pointless.
That's what he's saying. Christ coming, conquering death. That's a point of it all. The ultimate act of God's providence. Everything's moving towards that.
Man, talk about a deep dive. Started with suffering, ended up with, ancient Greece, the Bible, Jesus. It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
Leaves you with more to chew on than when you started, that's for sure. Like, if it is all part of something bigger, Even our own struggles, those dark times, can those have a place in that story too? Something to think about.
Now that is a question. Thanks for diving in with us today, everyone. And don't forget to check out the show notes. We've got even more resources there if you want to go even deeper on all this. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep diving deep.